Okay. Have you ever gone crazy for why aren't you able to memorize things good and learn skills in the shortest time possible? Like learning some mathematical subjects or a language or any other skill? What if I told you that it's not easier said than done? And that you can learn those skills in the shortest time possible as you wish. But if you learn great methods, and actually the methods that work for you and for this kind of subject that you want to learn, it's going to be very, very interesting. I mean, the skill and the journey of getting through that skill is the best thing that you could ever experience in your life. Today, we're going to go through summary of the book Learn Anything in 48 Hours, which is a really great book by Timothy Ferriss, and we're going to discuss that and different parts of it. So, let me tell you an overall promise that this book is a practical guide and system for rapid skill acquisition, which I'm going to explain what it is later. But it's not about achieving mastery in 48 hours, but rather about deconstructing a complex skill to learn its most essential high value components to become good enough or reach a level of basic operational proficiency in a very short time frame. And that the core philosophy is about learning how to learn efficiently and effectively. Let me go through the first and the most important thing, which is the DOS method, which comes with DOSS. D is for deconstruction, O is for ordering, and these two S are selection and stakes. Well, let's go through the first part, deconstruction. Deconstruction is the skill of breaking that thing into its smallest possible parts. At this stage, first you ask yourself, what are the minimal learnable units? What are the 20% of the components that will deliver 80% of the desired results? What are the biggest things that I can learn when I enter that subject? Then comes with ordering, sequencing those parts in the most logical and effective order for learning. At this stage, you ask yourself, okay, now I know what the subject is about, and then how should I sequence these ones? And how can I learn these components? So, this is the most important question you ask. Which ones are the prerequisites for others, and what is the most efficient learning pathway? Then we have selection, which is choosing the right tools and resources for the task. You say, what are the best resources, books, videos, coaches, or tools for learning these specific components? Ferris emphasizes finding just in time information rather than getting lost in theory. You know that you shouldn't be doing a lot of different resources and you shouldn't have all of sources that you can find on the internet or any other website. It means that it's going to confuse you and your brain so that you're not going to learn these information that you want in the best way possible. It is all about finding one way, one source of information and sticking to it because you want to avoid confusion and delay in learning in that method. Then we have stakes, which is creating real world consequences to ensure accountability and follow through. You ask, how can I create stakes that make cutting painful? This could be a public commitment or a financial bet with a friend or scheduling a performance or test at the end of these 48 hours. So you just want to make it interesting and you want to stick to it, and you also want to make it stick to you so that you're not going to give up during these 48 hours because there's no time for delay. Now, we told you the DOS method. Let's get into these core principles for effective learning. Throughout these 48 hours that you are trying to learn a skill, I have to tell you that this book is filled with actionable tactics during that 48 hours. But several key principles underpin the entire system that are the 80-20 principle or the Pareto principle, the removing friction, short learning sprints, and meta learning, last but not least, comprehension over memorization. The 80-20 principle or the Pareto principle is focus on the critical 20% of the skill that will yield 80% of the results. Then you ignore the non essential fluff because when you understand the 20%, the most essential 20% of the information, other 80% is going to be learned itself since there are some details related to that 20% that you've learned. So this is how you study smarter, not harder. Then comes with removing friction, which is make practicing as easy as possible. Set up your environment so that the path of the least resistance leads to practice. Practicing is something really important in that 48 hours and really needs removing friction. Then we have short learning sprints. Short learning sessions are better than a long session since it's going to make your brain filled with dread and absolutely you are more likely to give up. However, the process involves intense, focused periods of learning, for example, 2 to 4 hours, followed by snacks, breaks, rather than long, draining study sessions. Then we have meta learning, which is the prerequisite of the short learning sprints. Before diving into the skill itself, you do something effective. You spend a short amount of time, for example, 1 to 2 hours, learning how this skill is best learned. So, let me tell you a golden statement. In the meta learning phrase, you are going to do something. Before getting into the real study session, like the 2 to 4 hour study session, you're going to spend at least an hour figuring out what you should be doing in that session before getting into it, before getting into that 2 to 4 hours. And this is simply the best thing you can do because when the study session starts, most students are in this way. They just look at the textbook and they don't know what to do because they don't have a planning guide. At this hour and at this stage, you're going to do this thing so that you're going to avoid confusion and delay. And then, last but not least, we have comprehension over memorization, which I think you've all heard about but never gone through to see what it really is. Focus on understanding fundamental concepts first, which makes memorizing details easier later. When you comprehensively learn something, you understand why is it in this way, why is that thing, why is for example, why is this kind of chemistry formula in this way. Then you're going to memorize them better, since when you don't know what you're studying, you are less likely to be able to answer the questions on the exam. Okay, this book was all in all this, but I have to tell you something that this book is not a promise of mastery. The goal is to actually finding proficiency and confidence to continue learning. It's not a magic pill. It requires intense focus during that 48-hour period and effort so that you're going to do your best, and the most important thing, you're not going to delay, you're not going to spend any moment being confused. And as a conclusion, you can say that it's not a substitute for long-term deliberate practice if your goal is true expertise. Okay, that's all we have for today. And please give it a like and subscribe if you liked it. Goodbye.